Welcome to American Civilization and Culture. In this course, over 60 to 70 lectures and 60 to 70 sets of readings, we try to understand the American regime from its inception to the present day. Now, there's many ways that you can try to understand politics and understand a political community, but what we're going to try to do in this course is we're going to try to mix a coverage of the American regime from its history, its literature, and then using political concepts and philosophic concepts, try to understand what have been the major issues and themes that have shaped the coming into being of the United States and have made it what it is today. Now, we're going to begin in a very interesting place. We're not going to begin by talking about the Pilgrims. This isn't going to be your fourth grade Thanksgiving understanding of American political community. We're going to go back to the Greeks, and we're going to go back in particular to the father of political science, Aristotle, who lays down a basic framework on how we should understand politics. And he does something very, very interesting. He tells us right from the get-go that politics is about how human beings act and what type of associations they have. And he says there are three main types of human beings, and these are important types to remember. You'll see me over and over again this semester go through these types. He says, first of all, there's this human entity called the One. What does he mean by the One? Well, you know that you're one individual, I'm one individual, and as you walk through this world, there are individuals that make up a political community. But there's a certain type of individual who likes to rule. There's a certain type of individual who stands out. We all have a certain distinction, but there's a one sometimes who wants to be the one, the ruler. And that one can either rule well or in a kingly way by ruling toward or for the common good, or that one can rule in a way that is perverse. Aristotle tells us the one who rules for his own interest, the one who rules for his own acquisition of power and sometimes abuse of that power, is the tyrant. So that entity, the one, can rule well and be kingly, or rule for himself and be tyrannical. He says the second entity is found in human association, and that's the entity found in the few. Sometimes 1, 2, 3, 4 people gather together and they make up a few. Now, certain few people have types of distinctions. There are few, and we know this out there, who are beautiful. Right? Not everyone is beautiful. There are few out there who are wise. Not everyone is wise. There are few out there who are wealthy. So that category or entity of the few is talking about a certain group of people that is smaller, that all have a certain distinction. Well, what if the few are wise? And what if they are caring for the common good? He calls that group an aristocracy. But sometimes the few gather together and they make a distinction for themselves, and they don't want anything that's good for the commoners. They want what's good for their own person, their own category of person. He calls these folks oligarchs. So the better type of rule of the few is an aristocracy. The worst type is an oligarchy. Now, finally, the many. Now, here in democratic America in the 21st century, most of us just say, you have to allow the many to rule, right? Majority rule. Just let a popular vote take place, and whatever that popular vote does makes it right. The majorities are right. Aristotle doesn't believe in that, though. Aristotle believes that masses or multitude, the many, can be as abusive of their power as the one and the few. In fact, he calls the many who simply care for the needs of the many a democracy. It's only the constitutional rule of the many where they put aside the interest of themselves and care for the common good, where you actually have a republican constitutional form of government in which the good is what the many is after. Now, these categories of one and few and many are going to find their way into every conversation that we have. And here's why. That one and few and many that Aristotle talks about some 2,500 years ago is still present today. We can point to the ones among us who would like to rule. We can also point to the few, these groups of individuals who think that they have the right stuff and they ought to rule. And we can likewise point to multitudes that exist in our day. And we can also use that second distinction that Aristotle brings to our attention. Are those who are in power and those who have office, do they have the common good in mind or their individual advantage in mind? You see, America was founded by individuals or groups of individuals who came together thinking that a new place could be started where the common good would be front and center in our experience. Now, our question, or one of the questions that we're going to ask throughout this course, is whether or not that's true. But we need to know these categories of the one, the few, and the many to make our way through this story properly.